Hello, everyone. This is Michaela, and you're listening to the End All the Things podcast. As a life coach and facilitator, I work with individuals and groups to empower their best selves to shine to the betterment of all involved. My goal is always to bring you closer to trusting the voice inside of you that is authentically yours. My job here is no different. In my journey through life, I continue to meet people who use their authenticity, their gifts, to grow, change, and serve through professional and personal endeavors. These people and their stories become my gift to you, for I cannot keep a good thing to myself, and I believe that they may inspire a part of your story to evolve. Hello, everyone. Welcome back. It is And All the Things. Today, I offer to you Megan Dwyer. Megan Dwyer is a seasoned and fantastic and personable and dedicated financial planner who has taken her desire to bring more passion, more exploration, and truthfully, more self-care to her life. So she began the Money Isn't Scary podcast. I stumbled onto this in my search to continue taking information in and processing it through where I am with my money mindset. At this point in my life, I am releasing all the things that no longer serve me, one at a time, two at a time, but this is a big one. So I reached out to Megan and asked if she would come have an open conversation with me, talking about my experience, her experience, and quite frankly, your experience. So we open up our stories, our hearts to share our personal journeys and professional growth, to share our bumps and bruises and excitement with podcasting, and to share with you that self-care is not something that you just do at a spa. Self-care is having tough conversations, not only with others, but most importantly, with yourself. So buckle up, friends. We're going on a ride of self-worth and money mindset and purpose-driven living and all the things. Oh, and by the way, we jump right in. We started recording and planned to have a little preparation chat, but as it goes, greatness jumped out and I had to catch it. So I offer to you Megan Dwyer and all the things. So in our last conversation, you told me that you've got the woman who wrote Inside Out coming up on your podcast.
Yeah.
And I have been like, oh my God, like that's the person I want to interview. And my thought was, right, the coach in me is self-reflecting, like that takes audacity, right? To just reach out to the person. And then I'll kind of segue to say, but Michaela, you just reached out to Megan and here she is.
That's true. You did.
So let's start there today. Were you feeling audacious when you sent her that email, or how? Tell me how you knew when to do that.
Yeah, so I had heard her on somebody else's podcast, and I thought she was a really good speaker, very interesting person, and I just thought there was so many parallels in the story that she had wrote to the work that I do. And um, I wouldn't say that I was feeling audacious that day. I think through this podcast work and putting myself out there, I have created um, such a greater sense of, I guess, bravery compared to where I was before. And
Mhm.
I've really kind of found um, my own, I guess, if you want to call it sense of audacity or own sense of
Mhm.
autonomy or independence or just, feeling of sense of self and making a mark on the world and more so than I ever had before. So it's interesting because I was just having a similar conversation to somebody before. I mean, I think the growth that I've had in the last 3 years is incredible because I think when I started, or 3+ years since since I've been doing this now, but I think when I started, I
And
would have.
this being the podcast.
Yeah, this being the podcast, exactly. I think when I started, I was more like, okay, I don't really have a place talking to bigger people or people who have or who may be more well known, right? And but I think that had to do with my own kind of sense of self and my own sense of worth when I was started to put this out into the world. And as I have as my journey has gone on and how as I have grown and I have grown into myself and who I am and who I'm meant to be through this work and explaining it to people, kind of how I'm doing it, that has um the sense of self has shifted, and I think there is confidence where there wasn't before. And confidence is something that, goes up and down throughout your life, and depending on the scenario, the situation, the circumstance that you're in. But self-worth tends to stay the same, and my self-worth has certainly changed over these
Mhm.
last few years through this work. And
Mhm.
so I feel like now I don't really feel like I'm being brave when I'm doing it. I'm just saying, hey, you know what? This is really cool. I would love to talk to this person. And if they say yes, awesome. If they say no, I don't care. It's not going to change how I feel about myself one way or the other. And that's the thing, like
I'm
having this platform,
clapping.
it's amazing,
Mhm.
right? Having this platform is really cool because it gives me the ability to reach out to people. And yes, I have reached out to, I can't tell you how many people I've reached out to that I haven't gotten response from, or have been like, hey, what are your, have replied asking me for more information. What are your numbers? What are your downloads? Who's your audience, right? How
Mhm.
many episodes do you put out a month or a week or whatever? And I've replied, and then they said, no, you're not a good fit. So,
Yeah.
I mean, that's the rejection piece that I think we all fear. But at the end of the day, I feel like there's more to it than that. There's so much more that I tend to think of those things as like, well, that wasn't meant to be. And there's other
Mhm.
things that are meant to be. And I have proof of that, right? So the fact that I have people that have said yes, that do see the value in this is what kind of keeps me going.
Mm. That's like, we could wrap right there. That's a podcast in and of itself. You just gave
Sure.
us so much information that I just kind of want to pause on. So, what I started like vibrating all over at one point as you were talking, because what I'm hearing is I see it as audacious, right? Like when I reached out to you, like I did deep breathing. I'm like, all right, here we go. I'm going to make an ask of this totally random person who I know because I listened to your podcast. But it was an act of courage for me to do that, right? And the more I can see a woman saying it's no longer courageous or audacious, it's just me,
Yeah.
right? The more we get to that being bold enough to ask what we want builds the clarity, right? And you have built a resilience to that shame game and you put it into play. And I think it's fascinating. That's what I want for people, right? I want people to walk through the world knowing that they can handle it, that they know how to ask, they know how to get where they want, and that they're themselves, right?
And that you deserve to take up space in these
Oh, hell
places.
yes. Mic
Mhm.
drop on that one.
Which
Thank
is
you.
huge,
Yep.
huge. Because again, I think the version of me from several years ago would have been like, hey, this woman has so much more important people to
Mhm.
talk to, important things to do. Why would she want to spend an hour with me?
Mhm.
Right. But then it's shifted so much to now, hey, she gets to spend an hour with me, right? And this is educational for everybody. And she even said when I had emailed, she said, I can see why this would be a good fit. And I thought that was really cool. It kind of depends on how you pitch it, how you propose
Mhm.
it, right, and put it out there, and you can sort of morph it to however whatever topic it is and whatever discussion point you want to talk to with the person. But it's more that's the art, right, to it. But it's more feeling like you are deserving of being in the same room and this or the same Zoom room
Mhm.
as somebody who may be a little bit more, I guess, bigger or more famous
Mhm.
or whatever it is than you are.
Oh, so good. And thank you for adding that because we are so often, and I'll say we, for this context as women, especially told, we're all told to stay small, right?
Right.
But I really am. resonating with the idea of it's okay to walk in and say, here's what I need, here's what I want, here's what I'm asking, and I think you're a good fit. That's knowing what you want. So, how do you know a good fit? Do you feel it?
Oh,
Is
yeah.
there a checklist, a process? How do you know a good fit, whether it's with the podcast or in other aspects of life?
I feel it for sure. I feel it
Mhm.
in my body. And I just have this kind of like gut reaction. It's intuition, right? I think
Mhm.
you just know, you kind of instantly know if this is something that gets you excited or this is something that drains you, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So there's plenty of people that I listen to on podcasts that I don't really have any interest in talking to, or there's not,
Mhm.
I just don't know if it would necessarily, not necessarily a personality fit, but maybe a topic that I'm not, even if it is a topic that is something that I touch on or I'm interested in, something that there's just something about it, right? So you just know, I feel like you just know, and you have this kind of intuitive hit. For me, I feel it. Like I get this, it's like a buzz almost.
Mhm.
Like hey, I can't stop thinking about this, and this is something that I really want to run towards.
Hmm. I think I appreciate that because so often there's all this other noise and all the other things in life that can get in the way of our intuition. So, how do you quiet the noise, right? There's so many interesting things in the world. How do you quiet the noise in life? And maybe you're figuring that out too. But how do you quiet the noise to get clear on what it is that you want?
Yeah, I feel like that's the work, isn't it? Like that's
Hmm.
the number one question. And I don't have all the answers. It's funny, I was just working on a podcast episode myself this morning, and I was thinking about this idea of balance and how how balance is so kind of aligned with perfectionism. And
Hmm.
I was that person that thought that to have balance in my life, I needed to wake up at 4 a.m. and have this kind of perfect morning routine in
Hmm.
order to take care of myself so that I could be prepared to take care of everybody else for the rest of the day.
Right.
And it's not that. So I've kind of by way of process of elimination, I've sort of backed into how to quiet the noise.
Hmm.
For me, it's, I can't do it when my kids are in the house. I've got two little ones,
Hmm.
so I can't do it there. But I think taking the time to appreciate the quiet. And what I mean by that is when you have the opportunity to like be in the house by yourself or just have a moment where you're kind of, the kids are busy, they're doing something else, and you can just like be with it, like be with your thoughts. And that's the hardest part. Like I am somebody that's always been like a distraction, like just love distractions, love to put on the TV, love to throw on music, love to always kind
Hmm.
of be busying myself like with
Oh,
little
yes. And
things.
now they have my AirPods and Audible and podcasts
Yeah.
constant.
Yeah.
I'm
I
struggling. I'm
create,
working through that now.
yeah, it's like I create these extra um activities for myself that aren't really fulfilling at the end of the day. And
Mhm.
what I've recognized is that all these things are distractions from being with myself and my
Oh,
thoughts.
preach, sister. I just wrote a blog about this exact conversation. I'm
Yeah.
so
What did you
grateful we're
say?
talking about it. Thank you.
What did you say? I'm
Um,
curious.
you know, I started a sermon with a statement from A Course in Miracles this summer that was, let every voice but God's be still in me. And, in my coaching, I talk about the noise and how do we quiet the noise and turn down the volume on that so you can turn your spirit volume up. And, you know, and I'm talking about this and I'm saying all these things, but then a couple months later, I had a great conversation with a guy who hosts a podcast called Sober by Design. And in doing it, I really started thinking about what I'm addicted to. What am I, I've dealt with my sleep and food and drinking and eating and, I'm managing this stuff. But I've my earbuds are in all the time.
Yeah.
And I realized now, is the cost detrimental to my productivity during the day? Technically, no, but it's totally detrimental to my creativity, to my ability to self reflect, to take time, to get curious. And I'm doing it in the name of I love education. I'm curious. I have questions. I want to learn.
Right.
And that's great until it hits the point where I'm not thinking, I'm not saying, wow, Michaela, you're washing this fruit, you're doing this activity, you're walking. I couldn't walk without something in my head.
Right. Yeah, same.
And what am I missing?
Yeah, I think there's so many women like that. I think we're just conditioned to be always doing something, always again, it's like I think a cultural way again to sort of keep
Right.
us small. I think
Yes,
because
I
the
agree.
more that we are quiet, the more that we do listen to ourselves.
Because who
And
has time to complain or to be active or whatever the case may be when it's just do better, be more, be blah, 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 right? And we can go down that rabbit hole a million ways. But I think you're right that especially women are conditioned in that format. So in every opportunity we can to turn down that expectation, that should, that just go, 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 um, brings us closer to our own self-worth, right? And I think that's going to be a theme that we hit on quite a few times. Um, we're talking about quieting the noise, and I think you and I can agree. We've both go, 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 great at what we do. I'm going to be the wife. I'm going to be the mom. I'm going to be the thing. I'm going to bake the whatever. I'm going to do all the things. And I hit a point where it just broke, right? I'm like, this is not fun. I don't actually want to do this. But it takes that time to like slow down and say, well, why am I doing these things? What's the value of it?
right.
And I think you've talked about like you hit points like that, right? I'm not saying I've only hit one point like that. Um, but where do you see self-worth in the checking off the list and moving through life? And listen, being a wife is beautiful, being a mother is beautiful, having the home is beautiful, but it's then balancing all those things with our self-worth in the middle. Because we could clean and fold and mom all day, but we still want to be ourselves, right?
Yeah, and for me in particular, it's work. I think I like wrap myself up in work
Mhm.
because I am striving for something more because I don't feel good enough just as is. Like again, we're taught in this culture that we have to do and act and perform and achieve, accomplish, check the boxes. We're never taught that we're just okay being as we are, if
Mhm.
that makes sense. Like we're not taught like, hey, even if you don't check all these boxes, even if you don't have the most productive day or have the best meeting or perform at your best all the time, you're still okay. That's not a
Mhm.
message that women receive all that often. And that's
Mhm.
something that I honestly struggle with. And I think so much of my professional growth has been as a result of my personal growth and recognizing that it's okay. It's okay to not be perfect all the time. It's okay to make mistakes. It's okay that if someone's disappointed in you, that's a big one for women. It's a huge
Oh,
one for women in
absolutely.
particular, right? Like if you're not at your best all the time, right?
Mhm.
That's okay. That's all right. It's not the end of the day. It's not the end of the world for you.
Hey, hey
And
there,
you
amazing
can keep
listeners of And
you
All the
can learn
Things.
something from it and
Thank
you can
you
keep
for being on
going.
this journey with me. The fact that you're still here, I have to assume this podcast has sparked your curiosity, encouraging you to think of life beyond your current boundaries. Now it's time to take that energy and channel it into a transformative journey where boundless joy awaits. Introducing The Course for Joy, brought to you by Joy Enterprises and me, Michaela, your joy coach. Life gets busy, I get it, but self-care matters and should not take a back seat. That is why we've crafted a 4-week self-guided adventure to seamlessly fit into your routine. In just 15 minutes, a few times each week, our enlightening video lessons and engaging workbooks will guide you through self-discovery and bring you closer to growth. As a special bonus, when you enroll in the Course for Joy, you'll receive an exclusive 50-minute live coaching session. We'll celebrate your progress and create a roadmap for your journey ahead. Are you ready to paint your life with vibrant joy and purpose? Visit myjoycoach.com/course to learn more about the transformative Course for Joy. Let's amplify your joy and ignite your purpose together. Stay tuned for more inspiration and insights right here on And All the Things. Yeah, again, so many things. But I think it's important to say that, yes, there was a time and place, I'm not saying it was right, but where a woman's appearance and ability to do things could have been life or death, right? Do you
Yeah.
marry into a family or do you struggle here on the farm? So generationally, we have these expectations on us, but times are very different right now, right?
Yeah.
And I think that we're slow in catching up with where our self-worth is in that, right? The woman who could work all day on the farm was high value because that was producing. But today I always think about, am I being busy or am I being productive?
Yeah.
Right? And I think the difference is what is the value, what is the self-worth there? And we'll lead now into how I came to be in your beautiful space. Moment of open vulnerability here. Money used to suck to me. Money sucks, right? Like it's not anymore, so don't try to hack in. But one of my usernames, I did it like in college. I was like pissed off that day. One of my usernames for a bank account was money sucks. You want to talk about
Yeah.
like manifesting some not great stuff?
Yeah.
Um, I've changed it, mind you, but like that's where my mindset was, right? I was raised to be generous and giving and sharing and very Christian-like and very not demure. My parents always wanted me to shine. It makes it sound like they're very puritanical, but our culture, it's I think even more the culture than my direct parents.
Yeah.
Just be good, just be kind. That's my gift, right? I'm not like a brilliant scientist. But I've developed this mindset of money that it's something I shouldn't have, right? That it's something that, yes, get enough to pay the bills, but like don't have more than other people and all this stuff, right? But now I live in a world where you can be the boss babe, you can be all the things, go do. And I've been struggling to figure out how to blend the two, right? The me that wants to be fully me, bringing my fullness to life. So here I go to my podcast, right? Back to they're always in my head. And I'm looking through money ones, and I don't want to be scolded. I don't want to be you know, like taught to. I don't want it to be a class. And I come upon this podcast of this beautiful green door in the picture with this lovely woman sitting in front of it. And at the top, it says, money isn't scary. And I said, oh, God, sign me up. And I jumped in and I really dug into your podcast because you're very honest. You're very qualified. You're a financial planner in another realm of your life. Um, but I love the way you explore other aspects of our life and how it ties into money. So let's just go there, right? Money isn't scary, right? I'm your target audience. How did that become clear that this is the title, this is the direction, this is the identity this podcast will hold?
Yeah, it's interesting. That has evolved over time. When I first started this podcast, um, it was during the pandemic, and my husband had lost his job. I was a breadwinner. I had a 3 and a 1-year-old, and I found myself online shopping, even though I was going nowhere. I was buying like shoes and stuff. Stuff I didn't need and at
I
all. I
completely
didn't know where to go.
understand.
But it
Mm-hmm.
was my way of filling a void
Mm-hmm.
that I was feeling at the time. And I was too afraid to dig into what that was.
Mm-hmm.
And I recognized after doing this for several weeks, months, that I cannot be the only one doing this. But yet nobody really talks about it.
Mm-hmm.
So I always had an interest and a passion in psychology and human behavior, and the podcast is really sort of the intersection of my work as a financial planner and my experiences in working with individuals and my passion in human behavior and psychology. So it was really super vulnerable for me because I started to share more about myself. And I was, again, somebody who was taught just like you were growing up to be small, stay small. You're too much. Anytime I was always very like I'm a very sensitive, very emotional person, and
Mhm.
when I would get emotional, it was
Yep.
like you're too much, Megan, too much for me to handle. Go, like, I can't, just stop crying. You know what I mean? So I got these messages that I needed to not bother anybody. I needed to be quiet. I needed to like, please.
Figure it out, kid. Just go
Yeah,
be normal.
right,
Right?
right.
Like fit
Exactly.
into this tiny little box.
Exactly. So,
Yeah, I feel you.
you don't have to
And I
bother
want to
anybody
say,
else.
like, it's our parents, but it is the whole world, right? It's our
Absolutely.
teachers, it's our peers. I mean, I look at what my kids experience, like the messaging is to stay small, conform,
Absolutely.
fit
Yeah.
in.
Yeah.
All right,
Yeah. Oh,
go.
absolutely. Absolutely. So I really wanted to, I had this kind of like creative instinct in me and I just really wanted to get it out because that was just such a message that was
Hmm.
really like burning inside me that I wanted to explore.
How
And
did you hear it? Again, like quieting that noise because COVID, all the chaos,
yeah,
you're like, ooh, creativity.
yeah, I mean,
How
it
did
had
you know?
also, it had been there. It had been there for years. Like I had been working in financial services for my entire career, which is now 18, 19 years. And I have seen and had continual frustration over the years around how male dominated the industry is and just to have again the messages that women get in this
Mhm.
in our culture but then also within that field in
That
particular
cohort, yeah, yeah,
and so these are things that had been in my body. I've been feeling these things for a long time. And I think it was when I actually had the chance to work from home and I was able to have some space from it, that's where it sort of came up
yeah.
from.
Mhm.
And actually, the original title of the podcast was not Money Isn't Scary. It was actually going to be, I wanted to call it Never Enough, because I think so many women come from this place of scarcity and never feeling
Mhm.
like they have enough, they can do enough, they are enough, right?
Mhm.
So, but I realized that the message there can be intertwined into all
Mhm.
of it. What I really wanted women to know was money doesn't have to be scary. We think it is because it's something that we weren't taught. We don't know about it. There's no that's a big pet peeve of mine too. There's no financial education in schools. So
Yeah.
and there's starting to be like we're starting to pass laws and stuff, but like I mean, for the majority of us in their 30s, 40s, 50s, we didn't grow up with this stuff.
You might learn how to like put the stuff in a check,
Oh
right?
yeah,
Like where to
yeah.
put the things, but
But
that's
you don't
kind of the
know.
extent of it.
Yeah, you don't know what a Roth IRA is versus a traditional IRA, how to invest in a 401k, how to like what asset allocation is. You don't know like
And
basic.
would you say it's important that they know this before they graduate high school?
I think absolutely it's important.
Yeah.
I think the basics are so important because then the kids can then decide on their own. I
Mhm.
think having like knowledge is power at any age.
Mhm.
So even in high school, it kind of runs the gamut between like how involved your parents are in setting you up for a financial
Mhm.
a foundation for a financial future. So some parents are super involved and do everything for their kids and just do it and don't tell them about it. Some parents do educate them on it, but I feel like that's kind of rare. And
Yeah.
then some parents are just like, hey, you're on your own. So it's very different. So I feel like if you are armed and empowered with information and knowledge, you take with it what you want, right? You have that experience and you take it out into the world, right?
Well, and I think even in its most simplistic form, having been a high school teacher and knowing even back then what they did and did not know when they graduated, I look at it and say, if they don't understand that they're not just buying a car, that they have to pay insurance on it and maintenance on it and factor that in, and they think making $30,000 is a lot of money, right?
Right.
They can't cover the nut. They can't even fathom it. And the youth in our country today are not in a great place. You know, it's a tough spot for them. So I think the education piece is critical there. So much to the point that I did do some of that with my kids, and then I also taught them how to tie a tie, both
Oh yeah,
male
that's a
and
big one.
female. I taught them how to tie a tie. A cousin of mine worked in the fashion industry, so he sent me a giant bag of ties. And every
Ah,
year we would have them in 11th grade, they would learn how to tie a tie. I'm like, you may
that's
never need
amazing.
it, but I want you to feel what it feels like.
Yeah.
to put on that persona,
Yeah.
to try to fiddle with it. It was a really neat experience.
Yeah. And that's something that they will take with them, right? Into
Hmm.
into their life, into the future. I think my husband still struggles to tie, but he never wears them. So what
Right. And
difference does
it's,
it make?
you
Right.
may
But
never need it, but at least you've had the experience. So if you're going to watch a YouTube video now, you know how to like, oh, I know what that means.
yeah.
Um, okay, so it didn't start as money isn't scary, but the
Yeah.
intention was always to dispel that blockage. Is that
Yeah.
right?
Yes. And the intention was really to I am a firm believer that our relationship with money is parallel to our relationship with ourselves. It is. It's all intertwined. So how you approach one thing is how you approach everything. So I recognize that the phrase "money isn't scary" has so much more to do with our relationship with ourself and our worth and how we feel and how we treat ourselves than it does with the actual numbers, right? And the Roth IRAs and all that stuff that I was just talking about, the tax impact of things. That stuff you can learn. You can
Mhm.
learn that. You can Google things, you can take classes, you can talk to people. There's plenty of resources out there for that stuff. That's not, I think, the core of this. The core I recognize is that there was like a fundamental piece missing. I would work with clients and I would see all the time that they would you could run their financial plan, the long-term plan, and you could tell them over and over again, like, you're going to be okay. You're going to
Mhm.
have enough resources. You're going to be okay at the end of the day. Even if we plan for this, long-term care event, health event, for all these scenarios, right? Market drops, all these things, and we stress test it. But yet the client sometimes would just struggle to get that message.
Mhm.
And that made me recognize that it's so much more about the mindset and the belief and how we grew up than it does with the actual numbers. So
Mhm.
there's a fundamental piece missing, and that's what I really wanted to work on. And my audience is women, moms, working women, and I wanted to be able to help them feel less alone. Because again, this was not recognized as something that we even money isn't something that like we even think about as a part of our life, yet we deal with it every single day. We don't have a choice. We have to.
And
We
don't talk about it.
don't
Don't,
talk about it. Exactly. And so,
right?
and so
It's
so much of the
huge part.
podcast, yeah, no, it's absolutely taboo. And we talk we my biggest thing is salaries. Like
Mhm.
women do each other zero justice by not sharing what their salaries are and how much they make. It makes me so angry that even I think things are again starting to change, but like in certain cultures, especially in the financial industry, people are very secret and very and hide what they make, because if one person found out and then go broad, like it could be like a big deal.
Mhm.
So it's changing, but it's again not a very warm, comforting, safe environment. I feel like when you come from that place of having to hide
Mhm.
your money and how much you earn. And I feel like there's also another layer of shame that comes with that too, whether you're making more or you're making less.
Mhm.
Um, and and savings as well, whether you come from maybe more wealth than others, there's so much shame involved in that. So I think the whole goal is to really help people start to explore their own relationship with money. What does money mean to me? What are my values? What does it represent? Because to me, it's never, when we talk about spending, it's never the thing, the
Mhm.
item, whatever you're spending your money on. It is the feeling behind it. Like, what are we trying to go for? Right. And most often for, I think, women, for me, it's a lot of freedom because I feel stuck a lot with having two little kids at home and a full-time job and all these other responsibilities on my plate. So it's freedom, but there's also safety, there's security, there's so many different um, meanings of money that are unique and customized to each individual person. So it's really starting to peel back those layers and work
Mhm.
through that yourself.
So interesting. So it's like each person comes with this one goal of make me more money, right? Thinking of your financial planning world, or make me enough money,
Yeah.
right? But at the same time, what you're really dealing with is, am I enough, right? Like,
Yeah.
do I have what I need to make it through no matter what so that I can relax? And
Yeah.
if we don't confront those things, right? And I call it like the things that keep you up at night, if we don't confront the things that keep us up at night, we're never going to get a good night's sleep, subsequently not having the energy and the clarity to deal with the issue. So I look at it and say, let's just talk about it, right? Like, let's just figure it out, because if we can put language and name it and clarity, then we can put it through, a little test and say, what's the worst that could happen? Let's
Right.
troubleshoot it. Let's go for plan B and C. And I say that with confidence, knowing that I do that in a vast number of areas in my life. But money is a new one. Money is a new thing to put on the table and be like, let's talk about it.
Yeah.
Right. So why do you find, if your audience is basically people like me, right? Why today are we wanting, right? Because you don't have an audience if we don't want this information. Why do I today want this information, and I being generic, versus maybe 10 years ago or historically? Because people are showing up because we want more financial freedom. We want financial literacy, but we don't know how to ask for it, or whatever the case may be. But why do you think people show up to listen? Why now?
I think there's a couple of things going on. I think since COVID, the world has changed a lot. And I think people are now looking for more purposeful, meaningful
Mhm.
work and um, direction in their lives. And it's not like I think we're shifting from a culture of like, I just need to work so I can make money, so I can make money, so I can make money, but then don't really know why you're making that
Mhm.
money and like what that ultimate like goal is
I
for you.
agree.
You just know that you have to make it because that's what you were told to do. Um, I think we're starting to shift to a more purposeful driven, intention driven world and in our lives where we're kind of backing into what is it that we need to make? How are we going to do this? But by starting with sort of the end goal, starting with like, how do I want to feel? What are my goals? What do I want here? Right. And that's a lot of the stuff that I talk about. It's like, well, how do I want to feel at the end of the day? Do I want to take care of my kids? Do I want to feel like I've lived a life that where I have been that I'm proud of, right? That I'm proud to be a part of their lives. Are they proud of their mom? Like that kind of thing. And working through that. So starting with sort of that ultimate feeling and kind of backing into it from there. And you recognize, I think, that it's not all about money anymore. It's not all about having the most money and the most dollars just so you can have like these physical objects, these things. It's about the meaning behind it and the purpose at the end of the day.
So
I've
good.
through my own work, I've recognized I talk a lot about intentional spending, and through my own work, I used to buy things just because again, I felt like I needed that like material thing as a pick me up, as a little treat, as something to take care of myself because I was feeling so drained or whatever it
Well, you
was.
you hit the nail on the head. It's the treat. It's the
Yeah,
reward, right?
yeah,
It's that in and out and in and out, and you push that button and the dopamine hits and you're like, ooh,
yeah,
something's coming for me. I'm connected to something. I'm receiving. Look at me, the author of my life. And
yeah.
maybe that's my own self-talk, but yes, and especially with the conveniences of our internet today, it's very easy to do.
But there's
Um,
so much more to it than that.
mhm.
And I think that the more I have started to like turn within and start to trust myself and trust my instincts and focus more of my energy and attention on that feeling, that longer term, like where am I going? Then I recognize that I don't do as much of that shopping. Like, sure, it still happens because sometimes it's fun. And I'm going to be the first one to admit that I love a good trip to Target. I like going shopping. I like the thrill of finding something
Absolutely.
that I'm not expecting. Like, I think that's fun. I enjoy that. But that's the feeling. It's the kind of the adventure piece of it. The taking care of yourself piece of it that I appreciate as well. That's that feeling. But do I have to shop to do that? No, I can do that in other ways. And that's really where where I am starting to go. Like what are some of those other ways that I can kind of get back into the feeling that I'm looking for?
And that's so interesting, because that's coaching, right?
Yeah.
That's what I do as a coach. That's what we do in those situations, because we want the desired result to be positive and sustainable and the least restrictive approach. But it's so often we just want the immediate gratification, right? We just want it, we
Right.
just want it. But so what I'm hearing is taking that pause, whether it's shopping online or reacting to someone or having something to eat or drink or whatever the case may be, but slowing down.
Yeah.
What am I actually trying to do here? What am I actually trying to get? And I resonate with that because, I don't know if you've read the book Essentialism by Greg
No, I have
McKeown.
not, but I know I've heard of it. Yeah.
It's it it's very much what we're talking about here. Figure out what's important, and then you invest your resources in that. It doesn't mean you can't have nice things, but do you appreciate that nice thing for what it is? Does it bring back that feeling, that memory, or does it just make you feel like you have money to spend? But it talks about getting rid of the, little things in life and putting all your investments into the things that bring you joy, essentially. And that can be applied to the clothes we wear, right? So I'm not a big shopper, but I do love to push that order button. It feels really good.
Sure it does. Yeah.
Um, and I like to have things, right? But I have changed that approach. And one, to save money, but two, because I've decided I don't like picking out clothes every day. I do not enjoy the act, the process. It's struggle. I got to go buy the clothes. I've come down to, like, I have uniforms. I have like 5 outfits that I'm happy to wear all day, every day. And you know what? Nothing changed. Nothing
Yeah.
broke. The world didn't stop. But I saved myself like agonizing time standing in the closet. What to wear today? What? No. I just pick out the things I know I like
Yeah.
because it's that simple
I
and I
was
move
gonna say,
forward.
yeah, it takes so much energy off the table to like wasted energy in areas you don't want to focus on it on.
And I will say I do celebrate that. Like when I'm like, look at that 5 minutes I just bought myself.
Right?
And I give that version of me a high five, right?
Yeah.
Because that's the hard thing. I could be like, if I don't leave the house or show up on social media in a different outfit every day, which I've had those thoughts before, I'm not going to be good enough. But it's like, you know what? What I wear has very little to do with any of that.
Of course.
So I've simplified. I've simplified. And I think that process is true also when we're talking about how we're spending money,
Yeah.
right? I have found myself, oh, I wish I had money for that. Well, Michaela, you do have money. You chose to spend it somewhere else, right? Or you had
Right.
to, and it's just a matter of the choices that we make. So when you help people navigate these choices, what are some tactics or strategies to help them open up about what they really want, right? Getting them to that place of saying, I want to feel safe. I want to feel freedom. Um, or are people ready, right? I just assume coming into the financial, which is a very black and white numbers game, um, getting people, I guess, to be vulnerable. How do you help them create that vision?
Yeah, well, that's kind of the name of the game right there. You have to be ready for this type of work. And I think there is a little bit of a delineation. Like I don't, in my day job, I do the financial planning and I try to incorporate a lot of this into the work that I do, but not everybody is ready for it. So you have to like be sensitive to that, right? So you have to sort of be on their level. The work that I do through the podcast and the people that I've met and the coaching that I'm going to be doing through that as well is more I've sort of warmed them up, right?
Mhm.
Because these are people that have been listening to the podcast and presumably are ready to start
Right.
to focus on this type of stuff.
Right.
So you have to that's a personal insight, personal kind of finding your way and only you know that's the intuition there. But I think one of the first things that is I talk to people about is in starting this process is understanding what your values and your priorities are. And they have all kinds of there's exercises out there, but one of the ones that I really like is just a straight up values exercise. It's like a list of like 30 or 40 personal values, and you start by circling your top 10, and then you kind of go through it again, and you narrow it down eventually to like 3 to 5 or your top 2 to 4 or something like that. And
Mhm.
I think that
It's
is
a great exercise, by
it's
the way.
really powerful. Yeah, because it helps you to recognize where you're like if you say that your priority is health or
Mhm.
family, are you actually putting your dollars, are you spending your dollars in alignment with those priorities? Or
Right.
are you spending your dollars in alignment with other
Other
values that
things.
don't have to do with where you're at right now? And that's super powerful because then you can start to, from that knowledge base, you
Mhm.
can start to shift. And this is feel, right? Like I'm not
Yeah.
going to tell you what category is family or nature or
Right.
whatever, or being adventurous. I don't know what it is. I can't tell you what that category is. Only you know that for yourself, which is again the hard part.
Oh,
Women,
you're going to be such a good coach.
thank
'Cause
you.
that's the job. It's tell me what's important to you. Now tell me what you do. Is what you're doing getting you closer to or further from your goals?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
it. Like,
And the idea is women and and you tell me because you've been doing this a lot, but I think we struggle to trust ourselves.
oh,
Um,
totally.
and so we tend to look outside for either validation or just the knowledge, the awareness of ourselves. So people probably rely on you and say, Michaela, what do you think I should do? Or what do you think this means? And at the end of the day, it has to come from them because you
100%.
don't know them as well as they know themselves, even if they don't feel like they do.
Well, and absolutely. And I would answer that question with, well, that's interesting. What do you think? And they always have some, well, I think it would be crazy, or I think it would be amazing, whatever. Because we're so ready to look to other people for insights and tell me what to do and how to be and where to go.
Again, how we were conditioned.
Correct. And I say to the people that trust me with their hearts and their minds and their passion, I say to them, if I tell you the answer to that question, I'm just another part of the noise, right? I'm just another person to whom you are beholden. There is an expectation and there is a pass fail. There is a good, bad. And that is not how we are meant to live. You choose, you take the blessing, you take the burden. It's your choice. I got your back. But we very rarely have the conversation turn back to us. Well, that's interesting. Tell me more. Right? Just no, no,
Right.
no, sit down, shut up. So it's so important, at least in my work and I believe in any coaching work, to not have answers. I have zero answers for anybody. I can give you my input. I can give you my opinion, of which I'll be very clear to say, all right, I'm going to share my opinion with you. Right. And then I'm also going to share, I always like to make up opinions. That's the best way to get my opinion in. I'm like, okay, could be this, or this. And somewhere in there is potentially my opinion. But I believe, to your point, that women have been silenced for eons, right? But I believe that when we trust the voice within, we will never go without. And we don't have to look externally for all those things to fill our cups and our gaps. And we might spend a lifetime searching for that fulfillment, that total fulfillment, but I'd rather spend my time looking for that than being quiet and holding all these beautiful ideas in,
Right.
you
Or
know?
doing what you think you're supposed to do, but is really somebody else's expectation of you.
Gosh,
That
totally.
has to be the most like unfulfilling and like meaningless. I mean, that's just like way to approach life, right? That just
Mhm.
feels so painful sometimes.
Mhm.
And we all do it. We've all been there.
And we'll do it again, right? But
Absolutely.
it's then that paying attention of what are we doing and why? What's our goal here? And sometimes, quite frankly, my goal is to just sit down and shut up. Sometimes I want to just tell me what to do. I'll do it. Great, because I don't. Awesome.
You're
But am
tired
I
too,
being
right? And so this is in my mind, this work is it's a lot. It's intense and it can be that work can be scary. To me, money isn't scary, but to this is the kind of work, this like, who am I? Where am I going? These like bigger existential kind of like dreamy type questions. That is the harder stuff because I'm somebody that wants to know all the answers. I'm a doer, I'm an action taker. Like you give me a problem, I will solve it. I will
Mhm.
find a way to solve it. And finding sort of your life's purpose and your direction is elusive.
Mhm.
It's not like
Right,
tangible.
because who's so privileged and lucky and blessed to actually do that?
Right.
Like we have these ideas, well, that's never going to be for me. And I want to compliment on the yin and yang of us because you're like, money isn't scary. And I'm like, finding purpose isn't scary. And it just
Yeah.
goes to show that even you can go this far in a certain area and still have blocks.
Yeah.
But what's the most important is that we're not just accepting the blockage, for me, the money is scary mindset, and acknowledging it, looking it in the face and saying, here's the reality. It's a part of your life. You can either be scared of it or you can give it a damn hug and make it feel safe and subsequently make you feel safe. But
Embrace the discomfort, right?
yeah, well, yeah, I mean, gosh, what is the discomfort? For me, the discomfort is, I believe that I was meant to just serve, right? A teacher, a social worker. Those are my past careers. And you're just supposed to give, never have too much, right? All this stuff. And I'm here now going, but it's not too much. Everything I bring in, I use it's conscious, right? I'm spending differently. Investing in myself differently. And it's like, wow, I can see the value of money differently, right? Because I'm creating purpose to the way it's being utilized.
Right.
And it makes, to your point earlier, no longer is it just getting money. It's a part of a system, it's a part of a movement, it's an energy exchange. It's an opportunity for me to reach more people,
Yep.
right? And isn't that what I'm here to do, is to
Yes.
serve, right? So I was cutting off my nose to spite my face, right? And
Yeah.
I'm not saying I'm there yet, but I'm at least aware that I was doing it. The other thing, real quick, and then we'll get right back to you. The other thing that I was thinking earlier when we were talking about self-worth and busyness and productivity, through my movement of my mindset around money, and my conversations with my husband, which I'll be honest, we weren't having really important money conversations the whole time, right? And that's,
Rarely do people do
yeah.
that, right?
Well, and that's why I'm being honest, because I don't think I'm alone in that, but probably outside looking in, it's like, oh, they're fine. They figured it out. But then it bottles up and it's more and more, and then there's more to be small and shameful of. But through working with him, and we have help with this, but through working with him and being more honest and clear, it became very apparent to me. I'm a constant busybody, I'm going to clean something, but he's always been the breadwinner as the teacher, as the social worker. It was not my goal to make a ton of money, right? But I felt like I had to compensate for that with my busyness.
Yep.
So I
Yeah.
might not make X dollars and extra money, but I'm going to keep this house spotless,
Yeah.
where I'm putting all this energy and effort and resources, literally taking myself out of sleep and health and clarity to accommodate something. And my husband's like, I don't see it that way. I don't equate you doing the dishes to you compensating financially. And I was like, really? He's like,
Yeah.
no. And this is years, right? But the blessing there within is that I can now sit down and watch TV on like a random day and not feel guilty or shameful about it.
Yeah. That's
Because
the growth.
isn't
That's
that huge?
that was that whole thing is worthiness.
Yeah,
Used to not feel worthy enough if you weren't
yeah,
contributing financially. And now
correct.
you do. And that kind of comes full circle to what I had started off saying too.
Mhm. Yep,
That
that's why I wanted to circle back to that before we carried on. But
yeah,
I mean, that's my experience, right?
yeah,
And I think about how
um,
much energy in my life I have put forth, not just in this relationship with my husband, but my kids,
yeah,
right? My colleagues, my family. I'm like, gosh. Now I love being a server. Again, I want to do that, but I've learned I have to do it intentionally,
and you
right?
don't have to serve to the extent of being the role of the martyr, right? And that's
Exactly.
what it sounds
Yes.
like you came from, because
Yes.
again, so many women are like that. That's what we're taught.
Hmm.
That's the role model that we get, is that we need to be constantly doing and being and being everything to everybody except ourselves, putting ourselves last.
Hmm. Oh, this is so good. Thank you so much for listening to me. I appreciate it.
Of course, no, that's such a
Um,
relatable story too. So thank you for sharing.
yeah, I mean, so how about this? What do we say then to the women who are in contemplation of that, of like, am I doing that? Like, have I done that? How do we help people step into worthiness? Maybe that's the question.
Yeah.
The courage or the audacity, maybe, to believe it.
Yeah. Um, I
And you
think
don't have to have the magic pill answer, of course, but
I think everybody approaches this different, right? And I've been on a journey of worthiness myself for a while. I've to the extent that I've even Googled things like how do I feel worthy, right?
Mhm.
I don't
You
think
are
it's
so
something,
worthy, by the way. I
but
just
it's
want
right, but it's
to see you for a second.
everybody is. I think
100%.
it's again, it's something that you have to, it's not a flip of a switch. It's
Hmm.
not something that happens overnight. It's an intuitive feeling, and you just get there over time. I think worthiness, um, and I talk about this a lot with like self-care. It's all kind of interrelated, but it's how we treat ourselves, the little things, right? That show our worthiness. It's how we talk to ourselves in our heads. It's how we treat ourselves. Are we being that martyr? Are we putting ourselves at the bottom of the list? Are we prioritizing ourselves even slightly to do silly things? I'm going to be super vulnerable and share something too. The other day, it was like 2 weekends ago. I was with my aunt and we went to lunch, and then we're just bopping. We just went around a couple stores, and we went into Sephora, and my aunt's older than me. But she is super cool, and she acts much younger. And
I love
she
those ants.
she's
I love my
awesome.
ants, by the way.
Yeah, yeah. And she didn't have kids, and she is such a great role model for me because she treats herself well.
Mm.
She is always she's always dressed very nice, but it's not that it's about like the designer things or the high-end things. It's that she
She
takes the
literally
time.
enjoys them.
She enjoys the process
Mm.
of
I get it.
getting dressed and making herself look nice, and things like like simple things. We were in Sephora, like little makeup things. So she was asking me, "Oh, what do you use for foundation? What do you use for highlighter? What do you use for blush?" And I was like, "Nothing."
I don't have any of that
And
stuff.
and it made me recognize, like I started to get emotional about it, and I did end up crying, but it's made me recognize that like it's been years since I've treated myself um that way, since I've actually, I think a lot of it is this work from home environment too, and I'm
Mhm.
not going out of the house all that often, and I'm on video calls most of the day, and half the time I dress from the waist up, and don't you just wear yoga pants on the bottom. So it's the little things that I recognized that I was not doing for myself. And that all is encompassing with how do I treat myself? How do I talk to myself? How do I feel about myself? And if it got to the place where I was having an emotional reaction to it, something's off there, right?
Mhm. Yes.
So I
Yep.
think worthiness is in the little things, and it takes time. And I think the important piece of a lot of this too is therapy, is going through your past experiences, traumas, whether they're big T or little t, and understanding that those hold space in your body, and you feel those, and whether you recognize it or not, it's probably a lot of it's probably subconscious, but just starting to be aware of what we've gone through and how our past impacts our present, and recognizing the role that our past has in our current definition of worthiness.
Mm. So good. So many things to unpack in all the things that you say.
Yeah.
You have been paying attention on your podcast. You have so many good nuggets. Um, I guess one of my questions is, we talk about worthiness and we talk about stepping into it, but you and I are both moms, right? And we're tired and we're doing all the mom things. And we know all of this stuff, right? But it's a different application when it comes to how we relate to our children.
Yeah.
Um, and I think obviously it gets different as they get older, but how has that journey been for you in, dealing with COVID, dealing with kids, moving through this personal transition that you're in? I mean, what was that experience like? Because while it's doable, it's not the easiest.
No, I was just going to say it is not easy at all. They take up so much of your time and energy. Of course, when they're little, it's like the physical, right?
Mhm.
There's the need physically. My kids are 5 and 7 now. They're still, they still need me to pick out their
Mhm.
clothes and to help them like get out the door in the morning and pack their backpacks and all that stuff. So it's the job is still pretty kind of physically demanding. But that's where I think that's even more important, and even more important to do those little things to take care of yourself. I say this like it feels very generic, but it's not something that is like gonna become second nature to you. Like you have to intentionally factor that into your day. And again, it's not necessarily, I say when I talk about this stuff, it's not like, oh, I'm gonna go take the bubble bath with the rose petals
Mhm.
and the quartz and all this stuff now. Like nobody has the time for that in our busy days, but for me, it's in the way that we treat ourselves and the way that both now and in the future. So it's the little things um, that are the big things,
Mhm.
honestly. And I think the more that we can do those things, even without really talking about them, then that's what we're modeling for our kids. Our
Yeah.
kids know when we're depleted, when we're burnt out, when we're exhausted, when we've got nothing left, because that's when all the wheels come off. And that's when
Mhm.
like it's the worst in my house. We all tend to be grouchier, crankier, have our more of our arguments at nighttime when everybody's just at like done for the
Mhm.
day.
Fun.
And so I think the more that we can mentally take care of ourselves and treat ourselves kindly, the more energy we're going to have too. And the kids will pick up on that.
Mhm.
So it's a cycle, but it's nothing that in my mind is like a big shift. It's all little things that
Mhm.
add up to big things.
Which is yes, right? To all the conversations, it's how do we do the little things? A little bit of self-worth every day.
Yes,
Practices to build up and to create enough space in the balloon for you to float away, right? To feel that
right.
freedom. And I think it's also true in our experience as parents. I used to like run, I mean, and I still do, cleaning up after them, like, why?
Oh, I've
We're
given
just
up.
gonna mess it up
Yeah.
again, right?
Yeah.
And I've gotten better at it, but only recently. I like a tidy house, but my kids, they have a completely different agenda. And do I want them taking on my stress of if, let's go back to my story of self-worth and busyness. Do I want them worrying about putting the pillows back, or do I want them to follow their freedom, the freedom I want, to go play outside and to be creative and to explore? And it all goes back to what is the value and the goal, and what resources are we putting to it? Yes, I want my house to be
Right.
clean, but chasing after my kids to clean up after them is not going to have it clean at the end of the day, which is when I really want it, you know?
Right. Right.
And it's just when we reflect on what is the resource, what is the thing, whether it's money or our time and attention, where are we putting our energy? Where are we putting our efforts? And are we getting the value out of it?
Right.
And for me, I mean, I didn't get a whole lot of value out of being afraid to talk about money. Imagine that, right?
Right.
But it's the willingness, and it's now changing, right? And we can change our mindset, and we can bring in abundance. So I have to ask this just as abundance has a lot of value, the word owning it. Has it become cliche in your industry at all? Or because we hear abundance, abundance, and I'm all about it, but I'm wondering if people understand what that means.
Yeah, and I'm so glad you brought that up because I've talked about that on the podcast before. I feel like
That's why it's in my head.
it's a very trendy topic, right
Okay.
now. And so I feel like, yes, I feel like people don't fully understand what it means. I feel like it's like, there's all these, I don't know, TikTok trends and things like that out there now. And I think we have to take certain things with a grain of salt. It's just become very popular. And abundance, just like anything, means what you want it to mean. And I feel like it was a term that I was almost avoiding for a while because I was just like, this doesn't feel right to me. The way that I kept hearing it out there in kind of mainstream culture, I was not loving it. And it just didn't sit right with me. But abundance is such a it's such a personal term, and it has a very unique and customized definition to us.
Mhm.
So I do believe that um, if we open ourselves up to receiving, things will come. And I do believe that. I just think that oftentimes we get in our own way. We block ourselves off, and that's like the self-sabotage. And we need to start to explore the ways in which we do that and start to sort of clear the path. I
Mhm.
do think that things happen the way that they're supposed to happen, although, we don't always know what that lesson is. Um, at the end of the day, and sometimes it takes time. It takes years looking back before we are able to figure that out.
Mhm.
But I think the lesson in yeah, the to me, abundance is a buzzword, but I feel like there's more to it than that, and it's so personal, and there are certainly ways that we can appreciate the abundance that we have today, and that just allows us to open up space to have more of it, right?
Mhm.
And so I think abundance to me is really, um what do I have right now? I have enough money to pay my bills. So I can take a long hot shower. That's
Right.
abundance. Like we don't worry about
Right.
that kind of thing, right? We don't worry about how much um electricity we're having in the house because we just pay the bill and then we have it, right? So like finding the ability to appreciate those little things and the abundance that we see every day is just going to help us be able to open us up to receive more of it.
And thank you. That's such a great point because abundance is all around us. But if we only think it comes in one channel, one form, we're keeping ourselves very limited, right?
Right.
And if we can
And
open
that's a
the
block.
gate,
That's holding us back because we're
right?
focusing on one particular area of it.
Yeah. And I like the idea of, it's like the gratitude mindset of like when you turn on the light switch, it's like, oh, I paid for that.
Yeah.
My resources created that, right?
And
And
we take all this for granted all the
right,
time.
that feels different than, oh my God, I got to pay the power bill again. Oh my
Right.
God, right?
Right.
So the conscious spending isn't just about, am I going to buy the shoes? But as I'm paying the power bill, let's think of all the times that we enjoyed heat this winter and that we
Right.
enjoyed cold food in the fridge or wherever you want to go with it. But I think you're spot on in that. And I believe in abundance and I believe in positivity. But the toxic positivity, the just be positive and abundance will come your
Yeah.
way. It's like,
Yeah.
yes, and you've
Yeah.
got to, you can't just think that because you're going to miss all the other ways that abundance shows up, that
Right.
opportunities show up. And I really appreciate, just let's be real about it. Like, yes, it's abundance is legit. The universe will provide, but you got to get on board.
Yeah. And it's that
Got to get
balance,
on
right,
board.
between sort of the woo-woo and the real, the
Yeah,
realistic everyday.
totally.
And that's where I think each of us, that's something that I always struggle with because I'm like, well, you see again out there in the world, like there's people that just manifest and that's manifesting as a super buzzword too.
Yes.
And there's people that are meditating every day and they're bringing all this abundance into their life. Okay, great. I can't do that. I can't go sit on a
Mhm.
meditation pillow for an hour every day and
Mhm.
like just I can't do that. I don't have that type of brain and
But
I'm
you
not
don't have to, nor do you have to be
you
the
don't
kind of
have
woman that
to.
gets up at 4 a.m. with this very rigid morning routine. You don't have to be that kind of woman. You have to be you. You
Yes,
have to be
exactly.
you.
And you can do that. You can find that balance between the reality of the everyday and a little bit of the spiritual piece. And that's the goal
Mhm.
here. The goal is to have those two things kind of driving the bus together.
Mhm.
And there's a balance. There's a yin and a yang, and they're not going to always be one's not going to always be
Gonna ebb and
perfectly balanced with
flow.
the other, right? They're going to ebb and flow. So it's just you have, but if you don't have that sort of like kind of spiritual, bigger picture, dreamier, as I like to say, like vision of where things are going and that idea that this is all going to work out, then
Mhm.
I feel like you're lost.
Mhm.
And you can't always just be in that big vision, or else you get caught up. The every day is going to frustrate you, right? So you have to have sort of that
A
balance
little
between.
bit of balance. And I think, I have the word balance tattooed on my wrist because I got it after I earned my black belt, and that our dojo mantra was find the right balance. And what we learned there is that balance is not static.
No,
If you are standing still, maintaining perfect balance, you're not moving, you're not growing, you're not embracing anything. And it's about, you step out and then you pull it back together and you step and then you pull. It's the constancy of going back and forth. But you have to know what you're dealing with, right?
Right.
Otherwise, one will take you all the way down. And that's where, as any of us listening, myself, as we approach things like money and visions of our future, we have to have the conversation. We have to put it out, or we'll never get it. It'll
Right.
never be real. Um, and I appreciate the way that you blend the woo-woo and the concrete, right? The tangible known stuff. Do you find that hard to do being a financial planner?
Sometimes, yeah. But I also know that my initial like my personality tends to be more kind of woo-woo, high level, big
Mhm.
picture vision, dreamy, kind of like that's who I am. So in the everyday, yeah, I do because I am so like in the weeds and the numbers and that kind of thing. So I want to know, it's funny, I'm always thinking about like the next thing, the bigger picture. Where am I going? What's this journey? What's this, where am I at, like in
Mhm.
this, in life, right? So I do struggle sometimes to find that healthy balance between the two.
Well, I believe that you have the tools and tricks to do that, right? But it's really just a matter of pause. Where am I?
Right,
What am I doing? And why am I doing it?
right,
Oh, wait, do I need to be doing this or should I be doing something else? Right. And
right.
challenging the presence, right? So it's just like conscious spending, right? We spend our time every minute. Every minute of our life, we're exchanging our time for something else. It could be 8 hours of Netflix, which more power to you, but just know you're doing it. And don't be upset
Yes.
that you didn't do the other 75 things. Be conscious in that space.
There's always a trade-off.
Yeah, there's always a trade-off. So that's a great segue. And I hate to close, but my goodness, this has been fun. I have a couple questions left, but I want to segue because we've been talking about self-worth and, staying present, and choosing. So you during COVID, the world is, in chaos. Husband's lost his job, and you choose to devote your time to something that you need, this podcast, right? I imagine that wasn't always easy, right? Like, because life
Right.
is happening, but how did you hold that time sacred? Was there something that you said to yourself? Was there a belief that you put out to say, you know what, I know everybody else is chaotic and the kids are in virtual school or whatever, but I'm going to sit down and plan this podcast?
Yeah, I think I recognized how much it was for me versus how less about how it was for everybody else. And that's what I
Mhm.
focused on. And that was really kind of that was my self-care,
Mhm.
honestly. And um, during that time, I also had heard, I mean, there were a lot of things at first that you have to learn about podcasting, the technology and all the
Absolutely.
tools and how to edit and all that stuff.
Absolutely.
And I had no idea, but I taught it to myself. And I remember somebody telling me that most podcasts don't make it past the eighth episode. And I
Mm.
was like, I'm not going to be a statistic. I'm not
Mhm.
going to do that. And that was sort of my motivation to keep going. And
Love it.
yeah, the pace at which I've been doing episodes has fluctuated. Like over time, I was doing one episode a week, and the different days where I've just had um, to move around and be flexible with things as my life has changed.
Mhm.
But I'm in more of a groove, and I don't even know. I have close to 170 episodes at the moment.
Wow.
So
Congratulations.
yeah, thank you. But they're short and sweet too, and that's the whole point I wanted to make was I know that women don't have a whole lot of time. So yeah,
Mhm.
my interviews, my conversations with people are
Mhm.
longer, obviously, and you can listen to those on your own time. But I wanted to make the episodes, 10, 15 minutes at most, just so you can listen to them quickly in the car and maybe get a little nugget to help you with your day.
Well, and you and I have discussed that, and that is a piece of what I'll be doing with my podcast moving forward. So I appreciate the inspiration and the call to action for that, because I think you're right. I can see the value in both because again, I listen to yours. But I think that the more we can say out to the world, let's talk about it. Let's be open and honest. Let's be
Yeah,
vulnerable and walk that walk. I believe it makes it less scary for other people.
absolutely.
And, so I am always grateful when when people like you say, I've got this woo-woo part of me, I've got this super tangible, doable part, and I'm gonna find an intersection where they can both live, and it can be done in the interest of other human beings and serving myself, right? It shouldn't only be one way. We should be able to fill our cup with our energy too.
Yeah.
But so as we wrap, I love Tim Ferriss, the podcast, and he always asks the question, almost always asks the question, if you could have a billboard, assuming all your other businesses and interests are completely marketed, if you could have a billboard that says one thing to millions of people, what might you say?
Oh,
And
this
you're
is a good
welcome to change your mind tomorrow, but what would you say today?
It's a good question. I would say trust yourself.
Hmm.
That's been such a theme for me
Yep.
over the last several years. And honestly, since becoming a parent, my youngest is turning 8 in a couple weeks. And um, I just think about not having a clue when he was born how to do anything. And you get all this guidance from people out in the world, and you don't know until you figure it out for yourself, and you've got to trust yourself. You can't rely on what other people do because that works for them, but it doesn't work for you. So, um,
So
yeah,
good.
that's a big one for me lately.
That's so good. Thank you.
Yeah.
Oh,
Thank
Megan.
you.
So the good news is this is not the end for us. You are going to be presenting to my women's empowerment group in April, and I'm really looking forward to that. So please check that out, everyone. But if we want to get to know you, Megan Dwyer of the Money Isn't Scary podcast, what is the best way to connect with you?
Yeah, you can go to my website. So it's moneyisn'tscary.com. You can have that, will give you my contact information. So you can send me an email. You can also find me on social media. I'm on Instagram at Money Isn't Scary and Facebook as Money Isn't Scary. So go check that out.
Mhm.
And you can also check out the podcast. Money Isn't Scary. You can get it anywhere. So there's, like I said, there's a lot of episodes. So feel free to skip around and listen to a few and don't go in order because there's a lot of them.
I know we don't have favorites, right? Podcasts are like children, but is there a podcast or two that might be a good place to start for people?
Yeah, I think there's definitely a couple episodes that I put out recently that I feel very connected with. And one of them in particular is one that I put out recently on Valentine's Day, which is the connection between um self-love and money. And
Mhm.
most people don't realize that that's even a thing. So I think that's on a very similar theme that we've been
Yep.
talking about
I'll put
lately.
that in the show notes because I listened.
Yeah. Yeah, I can send you the episode. And then I've done one also recently on, well, the episode coming out tomorrow some thoughts on balance, which is
Mhm.
interesting as we were just talking about that.
Love it.
And then also I did one recently on this idea of kind of like feeling like a victim, feeling like we're not in control of our own lives, and how to take back control and how to let go. I think that's a common theme that so many women have. And we talked about the martyrdom and all of that, and that's interrelated. And it's something that I'm pretty vulnerable on that and share some experiences of my own from my own family and my own history and my personal life. So I get super vulnerable. So hopefully you
I love
can
it.
see a little bit of yourself in
Yeah.
my stories.
Well, and that's what we're here for. We're here to connect and learn and grow with one another and celebrate each other along the way and hold each other's hands when we need some comfort.
Yeah,
And I feel like we've done all of that today. It has truly been a pleasure to explore this world where we're allowed to be ourselves and to feel really damn good about it.
yeah,
And then to tell our friends about it and to live our lives trusting ourselves. And isn't that what we want for our kids?
yeah. And
So
authentically, be authentically
yeah,
you.
we
Like,
gotta model it.
don't feel like you have that. That's what I always want my kids to know is that they don't have to morph into
Mhm.
anybody just to please
Mhm.
somebody. They just be you.
Truth. Another great billboard. Just be you.
Yes, yes, yes.
We're going to litter the world with billboards. We're just going to cover it with good information.
I love it. Yeah.
So
Well, thank you so much. This has been such a
truly, I
pleasure.
appreciate it. And to you and all of our listeners, go make it a great day. We'll talk soon. And that's a wrap on another episode of And All the Things. If you enjoyed today's show, please like and follow on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. If you really liked it, please go ahead and rate it. Then think about who in your life might also need to hear it and any of the other episodes we have shared. Then share it with them. When you find something meaningful, something valuable, you've got to share it and pay it forward to those you care for. Thanks for joining us, and follow along on Instagram at MyJoyCoach to see more of me, your host, Michaela Birdyshaw. And as always, make it a great day.